Sori sniffed the air around the morgue of Jacka Hospital. It obviously smelled awful, but not just because of the dead bodies. No, there was something else here. But she couldn't pin it down. It seems my nose won't be enough, Sori said as she swapped focus to her ears. And after a few moments, she heard it. An airflow, heading in the direction of one of the shelves. She went over to that shelf and sniffed around it. Oh yeah, it's definitely behind here. Quickly, she tried to move the shelf, only to find that it wouldn't budge in the slightest. Alright, fractal time, Sori said, taking out a body-strengthening fractal and sticking it in her mouth. Then she tried to move the shelf again, and did so with ease, breaking the secret door that the shelf was attached to. Man, I love these things, Sori said as she put the fractal back. Rah! Almost immediately, an ostrich-looking Nomu ran at her, with its sharp teeth ready to bite. Only to have its head cut off a second later, as Sori waltzed into the lab hub. I expected more. And that's when she saw it, a whole horde of Nomu, charging strength at her. Sori smirked and got on all fours. Now that's what I'm talking about. Come at me, you ugly bastards. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX hands. How unfortunate you no longer possess one for all. Not that I need it necessarily. All for One said as he started crushing All Might's head in his grasp. But it's better to make sure it can never threaten me again. I think once this is over, I'll pay a visit to that girl you gave it to. You will do no such thing. All Might roared, as he started punching All for One in the gut, causing him to flinch and his grip to weaken just a smidge. Yeah, a dead man can't walk. Gamma 2 shouted from behind All for One, pointing his charged-up blaster for a point-blank shot. And then the earth suddenly shot up, forming a fist and punching Gamma 2 into the air. Gah, I do love how heroes announce themselves before they attack. Makes my life even easier than it already is. All for One chuckled. Then a portal opened right in his face and unleashed a flashbang explosion sword point blank into his eyes. Ack! All for One hissed, as that attack had caused him the most pain by far, as his sight was suddenly taken from him once again. This is when All Might released himself from All for One's grip, and punched him right in the face, sending him flying back onto his knee. He can't see. Attack him now. Got it. Gamma 2 shouted, as he flew back, and went to rush All for One from the side, while All Might jumped over All for One, and then tried to rush him from behind. All for One smirked, and when the two heroes got close, he grabbed onto their fists, stopping their attacks. Did you really think that would work? I have dozens of sensory quirks, letting me detect sounds, images, use radar, and all kinds of other things. Even without my eyes, I can know where you are. That includes Ms. Bura. Humph. That's exactly what we wanted. All Might thought. Meanwhile up above in the air, Gamma 1 called base. He's using his sensory quirks. Activate the device now. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Yes, ma'am. Her staff said, as they pushed the buttons needed to activate the machine. WRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR move, being in simply unbearable pain that came from his head. It felt as if his brain was attempting to burn through his skull and set his entire body on fire. He opened his mouth to scream but nothing came out. He released both All Might and Gamma 2, and fell to his knees, as blood started leaking from his mouth, nose, and eyes. "Now!" Gamma 2 shouted. All Might brought up both his arms and then brought them down on All for One's head. Crockum! The mighty blow increased the size of the crater and caused an explosion of wind to erupt, but Gamma 2 and All Might paid it no mind, as they continued their assault, punching and kicking the down as much as they could, trying to overwhelm the regeneration quirks that tried to undo their progress. "What is this? What is this pain?" All for One thought as he was helplessly beaten upon by the two heroes, and pain kept him on his knees. He activated every pain nullification quirk he could, but nothing could ease the immense suffering he was going through. "It hurts to think. I can't imagine the amount of pain you're experiencing right now, villain," Gamma 1 thought. "After all, this device was made for you." The anti-All for One weapon was a series of towers placed along the city, that when activated, would release energy into the air. Normally, this was harmless. However, if someone were to be using multiple sensory quirks, then their brains would pick it up and be extremely overwhelmed by sheer information overload, causing immense pain and almost certain death. The only reason you're still alive is because of the dozens of quirks you stole to sustain yourself. Gamma 1 thought. Still, I can't imagine this will last forever. Eventually, you'll figure out what's going on and turn off all your sensory quirks. Then the towers will be useless. How much longer until the evacuation is complete? Gamma 1 asked over comms. 7 more minutes, Hawks reported. We need 7 more minutes. Gamma 1 clenched his teeth. Alright. We should be able to dash. BRRRRR. BRRRR. BRRRR. Suddenly, Gamma 1 detected a massive spike in energy and looked down to see that energy was building inside of All for One. He figured it out that quickly. Gamma 1 shouted. All might. Gamma 2. Run. You won't survive this next attack. What? The two of them stopped their attacks and jumped back. But it was too late. Enough. All for One shouted, as suddenly his body turned white. And in the next second, everything was white. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Chaos Emerald had improved everything about his quirk. His feathers were faster and stronger, and their range of control had increased significantly, allowing him to use them to carry people to the shelters from all over the city. Even better, anytime a feather detached from his wings, it instantly grew back, giving him practically unlimited feathers to work with. And even still, he was no match for All for One. If he tried to join that battle, he'd get swatted away like a bug. So all he could do was get this evacuation done as fast as possible. And hope those four could handle Dash. Kakrakum. Suddenly, a massive explosion erupted from the center of the city, larger than the others, that might have pushed into the clouds and the surrounding buildings, destroying both. Hawk quickly looked away to keep from going blind, and his ears bleed from the overwhelming sound of the blast. For miles, windows and even whole buildings cracked and shattered, as the blast expanded and expanded, until stopping. After a couple more minutes, the explosion died down and faded away. Another few minutes later, Hawks could finally hear again, and spoke into the comms. What the hell happened? Did you drop the bomb? No. That was All for One. My said through his earpiece. He seemed to have initiated some kind of explosion attack. All Might. Gammas 1 and 2. Report. Are you okay? Silence. Shit. Hawks cursed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX clothes had been destroyed, and his body was steaming from the attack. While he had turned off his sensory quirks, the pain still lingers, and his mind was addled. The only reason he was even able to function at the moment was thanks to his quirks. He looked up and saw that the crater was empty. Neither All Might nor the Gammas could be seen. Are they finally dead? All for One said, getting to his feet while clutching his head. I should have never played around like that. I should know better after what happened during my last fight with All Might. Speaking of whom, did he really die? There's no way he could have survived that blast. Not even during the peak of his power, but still. With the help of the Midoriya, who knows what he's capable of? Kaboom! Then suddenly more exploding swords rained down on him from above. Dozens of swords, each one capable of destroying a city block with their explosions, rained down on All for One, destroying his force field, and doing a little damage to him, although his regeneration quickly fixed that. Ah yes, Ms. Bura was rather far away. So I suppose that explosion wouldn't have caught her. All for One thought, as he faced the direction he detected Sai in before he had to shut down his sensory quirks. About time I took care of her, and took that emerald. Shum. All for One jumped up with explosive force, heading toward the direction of Sai. Only for a portal to get in his way, and All Might and the Gammas popped out and tripped and smashed him back down into the crater. I knew it. All for One growled as he got back up. All Might landed a few yards in front of him, while the Gamma stayed in the air, totally unharmed by the explosion. I see. All for One said. Ms. Bura must have used her quirk to hide you away in her pocket dimension before the explosion reached you. Clever. And annoying. I've been holding back up until this point, for the sake of entertaining myself and taking my revenge in a satisfying manner. How foolish a decision that was. From now on, I'll be taking this fight seriously. Before All Might could even take in what All for One said, in the next moment, the villain was suddenly in front of him, and his fist went right into his chest. Then everything went black. Sori walked through the halls of the hidden lab, covered head to toe in blood from all the gnomes she slaughtered. Man, there were a lot of those things. Wonder how many tin heads have been killed already? Pew! 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 Sori then heard the sounds of blaster shots being fired up ahead. Looks like I'm about to find out. She ran up ahead and noticed a lot of Nomu that had been torn apart, but not a drop of blood could be seen. Huh, that's odd. As she got closer to the sounds of the fight, she turned the corner. And immediately she felt a chilling sense of dread overcome her. Slam! Sori barely managed to dodge to the side, as something rushed at her, missing her, and slamming through the wall hard enough to shake the entire facility. Oh shit, Sori muttered, as she immediately pulled out her fractal. If it was a second later with that dodge I'd be dead. Sori! She turned her head back towards the room that thing came from, and saw Protoman, lying on the ground, with an arm missing. Be careful. She's much stronger than we expected, Protoman explained, as Sori ran towards him and helped him to his feet. Don't tell me. Sori quickly realized what that was. That was Dash. Kiba, Protoman confirmed. Rah! Suddenly, Kiba, in what looked like her berserk state, rushed back into the room. Rah! She rushed at Sori with blinding speed, and Sori just barely managed to duck, letting Kiba fly over her head and slam into the wall, shaking the facility again. While Kiba was pulling herself out of the wall, Sori took out a syringe from her pocket and rushed at Kiba. She stabbed Kiba with the needle, only for the needle to break against her skin. Sori's eyes widened. Aw fuck. Kiba's nails turned into claws, and she tried to slash at Sori, but Sori stepped back to avoid it. And then she felt something grab her foot, holding her in place. Duck! Protoman shouted. Sori ducked, avoiding Kiba's next attack, while also avoiding the charged shot Protoman blasted Kiba with. Then she looked down at her foot and saw that a hand had come out of her shadow and grabbed her. She slashed it and jumped back next to Protoman. The hell was that? She can control shadows, Protoman explained. Don't you guard down? Even for a moment. Or we're dead. Meanwhile, the smoke that was created from the charged shot cleared, and Kiba was shown to be unharmed. Rah! Sori shook her head. Just couldn't make it easy, could you, Lady K?